Rose, Representative Rose, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman McGovern and Ranking Member Cole and members of the committee for allowing me to provide testimony on proxy voting and remote committee proceedings as established by the House Resolution 965 of the 116th Congress and renewed in the 117th Congress due to the public health emergency established in 2020. Since May of 2020, when House Resolution 965 was passed, thousands of votes have been cast in committees and in the House chamber without members being physically present. Unfortunately, members were allowed no alternative to remote committee proceedings, but we were allowed to choose whether or not to participate in proxy voting in the House. To this day, I'm proud to have been one of, by my count, 56 members of the House who have, in my opinion, not abdicated their constitutional duty to represent their constituents by participating in proxy voting. There are many reasons for this. First, and most importantly, failing to vote on important legislative matters in person would be failing my constituents that elected me and trusted me to serve their best interests in Congress. My constituents wake up every morning and go to work on the farm to feed our families, in the classroom to teach our children, into the police station to serve and protect our communities, or into the factory to make the things we use in our everyday lives. They should rightfully expect the same from me and all members of Congress when we don't meet those expectations, when we don't lead by example. We lose the moral authority to lead our country during one of the most perilous times in our history, when such leadership is most direly needed. Second, oftentimes there are important discussions, debates, and procedures that happen in the chamber. Constituents whose members vote by proxy and thus do not have their representative present in the chamber lose out on those thoughtful discussions and debates that can sway opinions or change legislation. While the world is becoming more connected than ever with this constant streaming of ideas and information on the internet, its people are actually becoming more detached from reality as we spend more time on our phones than we do with real people. This has almost assuredly been at least a contributing factor to the rise of raw partisanship we see in the Congress today, where toxicity amongst political ideas or ideologies has become the norm. One simple way to combat this is by meeting face-to-face and actually listening to one another's ideas. Of course, we may choose to disagree on particular issues, but it is easier to understand and to respect from where the other side may be coming by simply having those face-to-face conversations. I have found that respect and affinity for one another is almost always enhanced from a positive face-to-face human interaction. Unfortunately, we seem to have fewer and fewer of these opportunities today, and proxy voting only exacerbates the situation. Last, the rule on establishing proxy voting and remote committee procedures was implemented during a time when our strategy was to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic on healthcare providers. We put our trust in public health officials and locked ourselves inside our homes for 15 days to slow the spread, or flatten the curve, as some said. Commercial flights ground to a halt, and lodging was nearly impossible to find as governments imposed restrictive measures to limit private businesses from offering services in a countrywide effort to mitigate the health effects COVID would have in the short run of the pandemic. This obviously made it difficult for members to travel to Washington, D.C., hold hearings, and conduct additional official business, as it would have flown in the face of our public health officials. But those days are long over. There are no more excuses or mandates. As the resolution makes clear, the only purpose of proxy voting should be due to the ongoing health emergency, which no longer exists, in my opinion. Members bring no honor to themselves or to this institution when a foregone public health emergency is used as the reasoning for them not casting their votes in person. At the end of the day, members of Congress have a constitutional duty to represent their constituents. While we can differ in our opinions as exactly what is required of us to satisfy those constitutional responsibilities, we are all sworn to uphold and surely surely we can agree that there is merit and honor in striving to optimize, not merely meet those obligations. By continuing to proxy vote after any national health emergency has obviously dissipated, the quality of our representation of our constituents is, to one degree or the other, diminished. The pandemic has brought much heartache on our constituents in our country. The least we can do is make our best effort to represent them as effectively as possible, and to do that, the requirement for in-house voting and the face-to-face member interaction that accomplishes such an essential accompanies such is an essential component. I hope the committee takes into account these reasons for why I have chosen not to participate in proxy voting, and will finally mark the end of this emergency procedure that may never have been appropriate, but that has certainly outlived any legitimacy it may have ever had. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to address the